Here's what's coming up on The World today. World Health Organization warns that vaccine inequity means pandemic will drag on deep into 2022. Leaders at EU summit say Poland must respect EU rules. Plus, death toll passes 180 in Nepal and India floods. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shobowale. We begin with the warning from the World Health Organization that the COVID-19 pandemic will go on for a year longer than it needs to because poorer countries are not getting the vaccines they need. Dr. Bruce Award, senior leader at the WHO, says this means the COVID crisis could easily drag on deep into 2022. Less than 5% of Africa's population have been vaccinated, compared to 40% on most other continents. Well, still on the COVID-19 pandemic, some good news for India as the country celebrates the milestone of administering 1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses. Plus, the UK Health Minister acknowledges the health system is under huge pressure amid rising cases. Here's more on the global update. We'll have the global update, but focusing on the UK with coronavirus case numbers high, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says people must go and take up their booster jab. It's offered to frontline medical staff, those over 50 and the clinically vulnerable across the UK. For more on the situation in the country, Dr. Ammonia Gaspar joins us on the program. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you, Tanya. Good evening.
Good evening. Daily UK infections have been above 40,000 for more than a week now. Help us understand this. Despite vaccinations readily available in the country, why are we seeing a rise in cases?
You're absolutely right, and it's not very good news. Actually, today's figures are saying that it's 50,000 and a few more new cases. We know that the deaths, there's a rise 21%. We know that hospital admissions have gone up over 10%. But all this was expected. The the modelers had predicted this before the government relaxed the rules. So we're still well within the parameters of what we expected to happen when the rules were relaxed. Why is it happening now? The face masks are no longer compulsory. It's not illegal, but we obviously encourage people as much as possible, if they're in public places, to wear a face mask. There's more mixing within families and with wider society. We expect numbers to go up with that. But also, more importantly, we've got over 80% of our adult population having had their second jabs, but we know that the immunity afforded by those jabs start to fall after about 6 months. So waning immunity is a big factor in the rise of cases at the moment, but we still have a good number that are still needing to be jabbed. We've only just started vaccinating our 12 to 15-year-olds, and at the moment we've just had up to 15% uptake. The children are on half-term at the moment, so we anticipate that when they go back to school, the school's vaccination program will kick off with the COVID vaccination for many of the children who are obviously a huge number that are transmitting the infections at the moment. So yes, it is a large number, but we expected it to be this way, and we're still working within the parameters that the modelers have given us. Hospitals still have beds, so we're not at that critical stage as yet.
Well, Doctor, you know, in the UK, there are talks of the Plan B now. The British Medical Association has criticised the government for not reimposing COVID rules, such as compulsory face masks, like you mentioned. Do you think the reintroduction of restrictions is what is needed now, especially as winter approaches?
I think we do need to put this in perspective. Coronavirus has been around with us for a very, very long time. This is a new coronavirus, and we don't expect that we're going to get rid of it with clicking our fingers. We have to do all the public health measures. We have to listen to the advice, but we have to carry on living as much as possible. So obviously it's necessary to wear face masks when you're in public places, and a lot of public places have the rules still in place that you're encouraged to wear a face mask. And I think it's a little bit of common sense as well that is needed. If you know that you're going to protect a loved one by protecting yourself, then I think most people are willing to look at it that way and take the necessary measures. I'm visiting my mother at the moment. She's elderly, so of course she's vulnerable. And my daughter had a cold. I had to make sure that this wasn't coronavirus and it was just a normal cold. And if it had turned out to be, then absolutely I wouldn't be visiting her. So we do need to live as much as possible, and it's a balancing act, I agree, but we need to be sensible about it, and we need to take all the measures that are necessary that we've been advised to.
You know, there are also talks of booster shots, with the Prime Minister urging people to go and get their third dose. But is pushing for this likely to bring these numbers we're seeing down?
I think at the moment, the booster shots, we've had roughly about 4 million people who've had their boosters. I've had my booster. And like I said earlier, after about 6 months of having had the second jab, the numbers start to fall in terms of your antibody and your immune protection. So you then go back to almost baseline, like people who haven't been vaccinated. So yes, booster shots will help reduce the numbers of people in hospital and therefore deaths from COVID. We know the vaccine is not 100%, and we know that what it does is reduce severe illness. So you may still get it, or one may still catch coronavirus if they're unlucky, but the chances of needing hospital admission, intensive care, and death are a lot less likely. So booster shots, I think, is the way to go, definitely, and it will bring the numbers down, but not in isolation. We still have to take all the necessary measures that we've always done and that we're advised to do.
All right, then, Dr. Monia Gasper, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Taniola. Have a good evening.
Well, for the situation elsewhere around the world, here's the global update.
India crossed the milestone of 1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses administered after a slow beginning in the middle of January. India's immunization campaign has covered 3/4 of its 944 million adults with at least one dose, but only 31% with two. The government wants all adults to get vaccinated this year.
Huge congratulations to India for marking yet another milestone. 1 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses administered. The extraordinary feat in a short span was not possible without strong political leadership, intersectoral convergence, dedicated efforts of the entire health and frontline workforce and the people themselves.
The World Health Organization, which relies heavily on India for supplies to its global vaccine sharing platform COVAX, congratulated the country for reaching the landmark. The British Medical Association has accused the government of being willfully negligent for not reimposing COVID rules, such as mandatory face masks, as daily UK infections have been above 40,000 for 8 days in a row. Health Minister Edward Argar says the NHS is not under unsustainable pressure to justify restrictions, saying there were 95,000 beds in NHS hospitals, with 7,000 occupied by COVID patients and 6,000 currently empty.
Cases are rising, and yesterday we reported 43,738 new cases across the UK, up 16% from the previous week. And they could go yet as high as 100,000 a day. We're also seeing greater pressure on the NHS. Across the UK, we're now approaching 1,000 hospitalizations per day.
New Zealand has recorded daily COVID-19 cases for the second time in 3 days as the Delta variant continues to spur a spike in infections in the country's biggest city, Auckland. Authorities reported 102 new COVID-19 infections, of which 94 were in Auckland, taking the total number of cases in the current outbreak to 2,260. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has authorized booster doses of COVID-19 vaccines from Moderna Incorporated and Johnson & Johnson and say Americans can choose a different shot than their original inoculation as a booster. The decision paves the way for millions of people in the United States to get the additional protection with the highly contagious Delta variant of the virus causing breakthrough infections among some who are fully vaccinated.
To other stories now, the British police have charged a 25-year-old man with the murder of lawmaker Sir David Amiston and say the killing was an act of terrorism. The Metropolitan Police Service says no other arrests have been made and officials are not looking for any other people in connection with the murder.
We have reached a significant milestone. Following the submission of a file of evidence to the Crown Prosecution Service, charges have been authorised. Ali Harbi Ali, aged 25 and from North London, has been charged with murder and the preparation of terrorist acts contrary to Section 5 of the Terrorism Act 2006. Ali remains in custody and will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court this afternoon. We will continue to build our case. If there are members of the public who have further information that might help the investigation, I would urge them to come forward. Every piece of information in investigations like this is important, and you will not be wasting our time.
And away from the UK, the relationship between NATO and Russia is at its lowest point since the end of the Cold War. That's according to NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. He made the comments during a news conference to kick off a two-day summit of NATO defence ministers held in Brussels. The ministers are set to agree on a new master plan to defend against any potential Russian attack on multiple fronts.
Avenues and channels for communications with Russia, but we regret the Russian decision to close the two NATO offices in Moscow and to also stop their activity at the NATO mission here at NATO. NATO's approach to Russia remains the same as before, meaning credible deterrence and defense combined with efforts to have a meaningful dialogue with Russia. But of course, this has just become more difficult because of the Russians' decision to close the NATO offices in Moscow. And I think we also have to understand that the relationship between NATO and Russia is now at a low point. It has not been more difficult since the end of the Cold War. And we have to remember that we were faced with a very difficult dilemma in Afghanistan, either to leave and then risk Taliban returning, and we were clear about that risk, or to stay, but then risk more casualties, more fighting, more violence, and also most likely the need to increase the number of NATO troops in Afghanistan. So after extensive rounds of consultations among all allies, we agreed together to end our military presence in Afghanistan. The lesson learned process has to focus on both what did not work, what didn't work, but also what worked.
Poland's dispute over the EU rule of law is overshadowing a meeting of the 27 member states getting underway in Brussels. Leaders of EU countries have called on Poland to respect the rule of law. long-running tensions between Poland's ruling nationalists and the bloc's liberal majority have risen sharply since Poland's constitutional tribunal ruled on October the 7th that elements of EU law were incompatible with the country's charter. The Polish Prime Minister says he would not bow to what he describes as EU blackmail, but signals that he's ready for dialogue. To the situation in Afghanistan, the United Nations says it has set up a special trust fund to provide urgently needed cash directly to the people's economy through a system tapping into donor funds frozen since the Taliban takeover in August. The UN says with the local economy imploding, the aim is to inject liquidity into Afghan households to permit them to survive this winter and remain in their homeland.
We are very much working as a UN family, both across the humanitarian and the overall emergency response vehicles that we have, but also on the political and economic front. Our objective is, with the UN country team and also with the humanitarian team, to essentially have the critical mass to make a difference in the short term. And clearly what we are witnessing is not only a nation and a country in the midst of political turmoil. What we are also witnessing is an economic implosion, both in terms of a national economic and financial system, but perhaps more dramatically and immediate, the people's economy, the economy of where people earn their daily livelihoods, the incomes they use to feed their families. We are witnessing across the whole country an enormous unfolding economic crisis.
More than 180 people have died after heavy rainfall triggered flash floods in Nepal and two Indian states, Uttarakhand and Kerala. Homes were submerged or crushed by rocks swept into them by landslides. At least 88 people died in Nepal and 55 in Uttarakhand, including 5 from a single family, with dozens more missing in both nations. Rains further south in India's Kerala state also triggered deadly floods, leaving another 42 dead. The Nigerian delegation to the Global Tech Exhibition have finally arrived at the event, which closes today. The delegation, comprising of 9 startup founders supported by the National Information Technology Development Agency, are here to attract strategic partners and investors. The late arrival is credited to the flight delays caused by the flight ban between Nigeria and the UAE, host country of the event, which is the largest tech conference in the Middle East. A total of 192 countries are said to have participated this year. Our correspondent, Mayowa Adigoke, brings us more about the Nigeria delegation.
After travel complications caused by the flight ban between Nigeria and the UAE, Nigeria's delegation to the Global Tech Exhibition GITEX in Dubai arrives on day 4 of the 5-day event. Various opportunities for networking have been missed, but founders of all 9 startups showcasing their digital products at the Nigeria Pavilion express optimism they can make the most of their stay.
Yeah, of course, anything is possible. So we'll be optimistic and we believe that everything will work out for the best.
So basically, from my own understanding, is the diplomatic route between Nigeria and the UAE, where I believe this can be settled because we have a long-standing relationship between both countries, and it's just a matter of time, and we'll all be happy coming back to Dubai.
GITEX provides the opportunity to attract investments necessary for these founders to scale up their business, which offers solutions in various fields, including fintech, waste management, mental health care, and transportation.
And we have about 10,000 service providers on our waiting list. But the problem with that is most of those people on our waiting list are not Nigerians. We want to give Nigerians this ability to come on board first, then other African countries that come on board, then we'll open it to the wider world. And trust me, Choplock is the first technology company from Africa that can be used in any part of the world, whether as a service provider or as a subscriber.
We provide innovative waste management solutions for homes and commercial hubs through our smart waste bin that communicates information regarding the content of the waste inside the waste bin to waste management centers to come and pack the waste in order to minimize diseases and infections.
Their presence here is backed by the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, which is determined to ensure Nigerian youth get access to international opportunities.
The President expanded the mandate of our ministry to cover digital economy, because digital economy is the fastest growing economy in the world. So this is an opportunity for us to bring our startups to see what is happening globally so that we can go back and replicate it at home.
Nigerian startup ecosystem is very vibrant, as you know. Globally now, we have a lot of startups that are getting a lot of international attention. So we take opportunity with GITEX to showcase them, especially those in the area of digital-related activities.
As these Nigerian tech founders scramble to get last-minute opportunities, the Nigerian government may need to pay a closer attention to the impact its ongoing diplomatic row with the UAE is having on the Nigerian youth and the Nigerian economy. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Maya Wadegoke for Channels Television News.
Now, South Korea has launched its first homegrown rocket, stepping up the country's ambitions in space. The Korean satellite launch vehicle 2 is known as Nuri. President Moon Jae-in said the vehicle completed its full flight sequence but failed in its goal of putting a dummy satellite in orbit. Such launches are essential for a space program but could potentially also have military applications. South Korea is locked in an arms race with North Korea, with both recently test firing new weapons. The North put a satellite in orbit in 2012. And finally on the program, could you eat a 2.2-pound burger? Well, if you're up for the challenge, a restaurant in Egypt has organized a competition awarding a $63 voucher to contestants who can finish the mountain of meat. The burger is topped with a hefty amount of melted cheese and garnished with 4 different kinds of sauce. This kind of meal would usually feed about 4 to 6 people. Well, that's definitely too much meat. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shabuale. Bye for now.